There's an old expression, slow as molasses in January. It means the slowest thing you can imagine. Molasses in the cold barely moves. So here's a question that shouldn't have an answer. How did a flood of molasses in January move fast enough to kill 21 people? Because on one freezing afternoon in Boston, the slowest liquid on Earth became a wave 2 stories high, moving faster than a person could run. January 15th. 1919. Boston's North End was a crowded, working-class neighborhood packed with Italian and Irish immigrant families. Looming over it all was a giant steel tank, 50 feet tall. Inside it sat 2.3 million gallons of molasses. And this wasn't for baking. This molasses was on its way to becoming industrial alcohol. A lot of it for making munitions in the First World War. That tank was a link in a war machine. Here's the part that turns a disaster into a tragedy. The tank had leaked from the day it was built. 4 years earlier. It leaked so badly that neighborhood kids would fill cups from the drips. The company's response was not to fix it. It was to paint the tank brown so the leaks wouldn't show. People said you could hear it groan when it was full. Everyone could see something was wrong, and nobody stopped it. That January had been bitterly cold. Then the temperature jumped, almost 40 degrees in a couple of days, and the tank was filled nearly to the top. Just after noon, the seams let go. Witnesses said they heard what sounded like a machine gun. That was the rivets shooting out of the steel. Then the tank tore open, and a wall of molasses, reported as high as 25, even 40 feet, burst into the streets at around 35 miles an hour. It flattened buildings, knocked a firehouse off its foundation, and bent the steel supports of the elevated railway. And it caught people who had no idea it was coming. 21 people were killed, and about 150 were injured. Among the dead were laborers, a firefighter, and children. A disaster made of syrup sounds like a joke, right up until you read the names of the people it took. Now, the part that makes this more than a freak accident. The science of why a molasses flood is worse than a water flood. Molasses does something water never does. The colder it gets, the thicker it gets. Dramatically, exponentially. The molasses burst out of the tank, relatively warm, so it moved fast. Fast enough to knock you off your feet and carry you away. But the moment it hit the freezing January air, it began to thicken and set. Rescuers described people trapped in it like insects in amber. The harder they struggled, the more it held them. A century later, in 2016, a team of Harvard scientists actually modeled this. They confirmed it. The cold air thickening the molasses mid-flow is exactly why so many people couldn't escape. The wave was fast enough to catch you, and then solid enough that you couldn't get out. That's the whole horror of it, in one sentence. The company had an explanation ready. They claimed the tank hadn't failed, that someone had blown it up. Anarchists, they said. It didn't hold, and what followed was one of the first big class action cases in Massachusetts history. Thousands of days of testimony. Investigators found the truth the neighborhood already knew. The tank was too thin, and it was never properly tested. Nobody had even filled it with water to check it first. The warning signs had been visible for years, painted over instead of fixed. The company was found responsible and paid the families. And cases like this one help push the rules we now take for granted, that an engineer has to sign off on a structure and prove it's safe. For years afterward, people in the North End swore that on a hot day you could still smell molasses in the streets. Slow as molasses in January. We say it to mean harmless, sluggish, nothing to fear. But in January of 1919, molasses was the fastest, deadliest thing in Boston. And it didn't become a weapon because of strange chemistry or bad luck. It became a weapon because a tank everyone could see was failing, and no one stopped it in time. Thanks for watching Brainstorm, Bob. If this made you think, hit subscribe for more. Curiosity, ideas, and real answers. See you in the next one.